Battlefield 2042 just had its beta. You may have seen the gameplay video that I uploaded on the channel very recently, but this is the follow-on video, my personal opinion on the game, more of a chatty video, and we're going to go over the game and break it down into 3 sections. The good, which is basically the things that I thought the game was really good at, self-explanatory. The bad things are what's meant to be in the game that I don't think is a good move to put in the game. And then you got the ugly, which is just things that shouldn't be in the game. So, let's start with the shorter part of this list, unfortunately, and that is the good. Firstly, the obvious one, just how good the game looks. The game is very good looking, very vibrant, and for the most part there were no graphical errors that I could see. Sure, the game was very cartoony in terms of how vibrant it was. It wasn't gritty like previous Battlefield titles, but that's sort of the look that they were going for. And personally, for a game that is very action-packed and online only, I think the art style and the map layouts work really well. Another great thing from what we could tell from the beta is the maps are really well drawn out. You have tons of replayability. Even just playing Orbital, there are tons of replayability from this game, as you can see. Events don't always plan out the same way. Not only are you going to have different engagements and different firefights, but you've got dynamic weather, so sometimes you'll be playing on a sunny day, sometimes you can be playing on a really rainy day, and sometimes if you're really lucky, a whole tank will get picked up in the air by a tornado, flung around in circles and land straight on your head because Battlefield things. And not only the weather but the destructible environments as well makes the game look really good. You've got destructible terrain, like if a tank shoots at you or a helicopter or a jet shoots a rocket, it will impact the ground and make a crater, and that crater will stay there. Now, you can't completely flatten buildings, but you can knock the sides of walls off of them, and that is really good for the most part. It really just brings Battlefield to life, especially with a map that has so many tanks and so many aircraft. You're going to want that destructibility. But the destructibility comes into its own when, on Orbital, you have the rocket launch, and that happens towards the later part of the match, but as the rocket launch sequence is starting, you're able to shoot it with tanks and aircraft, and if you shoot it enough as a collective, as a whole 128 players, that rocket will blow up, meaning each match isn't always the same. I played a few matches where the whole match stopped fighting, for the most part, and they all focused on blowing that rocket up, and it was really a sight to see. And then after that, well, the fighting continued, but that was part of the fun. And it really is fun, watching how different matches can have different consequences. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the weapon customization. Being able to do that on the fly is something I've never seen before. It's really unique and it works really well. Being able to go in for close range engagements, and then when you come out of that, quickly hold the T button on your keyboard or whatever you're playing on and change over to a longer range scope for those longer range engagements as you move in across open terrain. Really interesting. However, and we move on to the bad now, because the weapon wheel is also a little bit jank, because everyone has access to it, meaning all of the weapons that you unlock, all you need to do is pick them up off the floor, and then you've got a full weapon customization, no matter if you've unlocked the weapon or not. For example, when I first started playing, I had people already rocking the AK-24, and that was an unlockable weapon in the beta, but I was able to pick it up off the ground and fully customize it with all of the scopes, all of the attachments, even though I've never used the weapon before, not even unlocked the weapon yet. Not only that, but you were able to change too much in my opinion. Having different ammo types can lead to problems, and there is a whole different equipment that allows you to drop an ammo box on the floor. That ammo box is not needed, because say you've got an LMG, you get 400 rounds of normal ammo and 400 rounds of AP ammo, meaning you can shoot all 400 rounds of the normal ammo, just hold T and switch to the AP ammo in like a second, and you have another 400 rounds, and by that point you're probably going to die with how chaotic the match is. And this happens with every weapon. Every weapon has different ammo types, whether it be the AK, the M5A3, all sorts of stuff like that. You have different ammo types, and that is a problem, because it's going to make the ammo box completely unusable, and you don't need it at all, because you could just pick up an enemy's weapon as well, and boom, there you go, more ammo. And talking about the M5A3 specifically, It comes with an underbarrel grenade launcher, and bear in mind I didn't use this. I still think it was a bit much, meaning no matter what you're doing, everyone that is rocking that weapon has access to an underbarrel grenade launcher. You can switch from a foregrip to an underbarrel grenade launcher in a second. You can go from a foregrip for having more control, or you can just go, do you know what, I want to blow you up, and then do it in a second without people even having a chance to react. I think there's too much customization. I don't know whether this will be changed when the game's fully released, but I think it can be a little damaging. Another thing, and this is a very common thing that I've been hearing across the community, is the operator system and how hard it is to distinguish an enemy player from a friendly. Skins are exactly the same no matter whether you're playing for the Russians or the US, and in Orbital and the beta there was only 4 operators, so half the time I would see Caspers running around and they're all ghillie suited up, and I couldn't tell from a distance whether that's a friend or an enemy, so I'll pull out my sniper, look at him, shoot him, and realise it's a friendly. And the same goes for an enemy. I would be running around thinking it's a friendly and then get shot in the back because I don't realise that it's an enemy player. This is such an easy thing to fix, and games do it in so many different ways. Some games add a tiny, really indistinguishable from a distance red outline to enemy players, like Halo Infinite did recently. Or you've got the simple ability to change a colour of someone's camo depending on what side you're on. And the change doesn't need to be massive. It doesn't need to be red versus blue, but it could be grey versus beige, or something different depending on the map you're on. There's so many different colour camos in real life, you ain't swaying too much from reality by having different colour camouflages just to distinguish players, especially when there's so much going on around you. I also really tried to like the movement in this game, and it just did not work. I just didn't enjoy it one bit. It was just too fast. It felt so quick. I felt like I could keep up with some of the vehicles in this game, and that's just crazy. Especially when you encounter a slide into that as well. Yes, there are power slides in this game because this is the most arcadey Battlefield that I've ever played. Bunny hopping and power sliding around the map is definitely going to become a thing once the full game's released. I saw it plenty enough in the beta, so it's not going to stop. Maybe add a little bit of inertia. Again, not a massive thing to add, but it would have made the whole bit of difference. Having a little bit of realism in your movement would go a long way, especially for a game that focuses on the attention to detail for the most part. Now, I feel like the movement was done in a specific way. The movement reminds me very much like a Battle Royale setting, and I think that's what they're going to lead up to. I mean, their main competitor's making an absolute killing with it, so why wouldn't they try it as well, you know? And this may be me coming from a tactical shooter point of view, but I don't need to be running like Usain Bolt with all that gear on my back just to feel like I'm in a fast-paced shooter. Because with the amount of players that you've got, and the amount of aircraft and ground vehicles going on, it's a constant fight whether you're moving or not. And speaking of helicopters and ground vehicles, it's too much, in my opinion. The jets I'll get onto when I talk about the ugly, but just the amount of aircraft in the game, and the aircraft's done on a personal cooldown, so as long as someone is waiting there to press that they want to go to aircraft and they want to fly a helicopter or fly a jet, then in theory you can have a limitless amount of aircraft on the map, and I think that's crazy. I've never been one to actually properly pilot an aircraft in a Battlefield game. I'm more boots on the ground with any game like this, but for me, I felt like I was at a real disadvantage not being in an aircraft, because there's so little to counter it when you're on the ground, and that's because of how bad they're made. Being able to pinpoint an actual aircraft when they're flying around in the air is a nightmare because they're jumping all over the place. And this is where I come on to the ugly, ladies and gentlemen. Oh yes, the aircraft. They're terrible. They don't work properly. Look at this clip of them bouncing around like Pong. How are you meant to hit one of them with a rocket, or anything for that matter? Occasionally you'll get a smooth aircraft flying over you, and that's only when they're really close, and by that point you're basically dead anyway. So how do we combat it? Well, they need to be smoother when flying and not bouncing 60 feet up and down in the space of a couple of seconds, and not doing barrel rolls in the air, because the position for them on your screen is not the same for the position as they are on theirs it's a bit crazy, and that's why that's happening, and it shouldn't. They should be in a static position on the server no matter what sort of client's looking at it. Now, it's not to say that it always does this, but it's happened to me more often than not that the aircraft just bug out and you can't seem to hit them for love nor money. Another thing that I think is ugly is sniping in this game. Although sure, it's satisfying to hit a long range kill or a moving target from a helicopter or something like that, it's just so slow. And I'm not talking about the fire rate. The fire rate on the sniper rifle's fine, but the SWS specifically, the bullet travel time is just incredibly slow, and it doesn't need to be. And you can make it slower, by the way, by just picking the other ammunition type in the weapon customization menu. And you can do that on the fly. So if you want to hinder yourself even more, you can pick the other ammo type that doesn't come loaded as default, because that slows down your bullet velocity even more. And while we're on the topic of guns, let's talk about them, because there are only 3 or 4 that make the cut really, in the beta anyway. I'm sure there'll be more, and I'm sure weapon balancing will happen. But the LMG has no recoil, especially on console. I played on PC, so it's a little bit harder to control, but when you have a mouse and keyboard, it's easier to control, if that makes any sense. I can shoot people at any range, full auto spraying, and yeah, you can just laser beam people from across the map with it. And not to mention, it winds up and the fire rate isn't consistent. It starts to get faster and faster the more you spray. So it starts off really slow and chugs along, and then it speeds up like you're almost shooting a minigun by the time you're ending your magazine. The M5A3, amazing weapon, a weapon that you had from the start at the beta. Don't really need anything else because it does it all. It's got a longer range scope that you can pick from, or a red dot, basically no recoil, decent enough mag size, and you can change any ammo type you want. You can have a rifle caliber, you can have armor piercing heavier ammo, or you can have pistol ammo in one weapon. And like I said, constantly you can change that on the fly. So, you know, that's really the only weapon you're going to need. You've got the Vector and you've got that UMP style SMG, I can't remember what it's called. They're really, really good close range and really can't be beaten. And then you've got the sniper rifle, the SWS, which is really the only weapon that you can use super long range if you're trying to snipe. Don't even go for the marksman rifle because that was garbage. But other than that, that's really the only weapons you're going to be picking from, because they're really the only weapons that did anything in the beta. Now, like I said, that will change probably, but still, a game this close to launch and a beta that you put out openly to everyone, you'd want your weapon balancing to be at least passable, so every weapon has its purpose, to avoid people thinking, oh, well, that's just an overpowered meta weapon before the game's even released. Now, let's talk about bugs. The main reason for the ugly category, because there was a lot of them. Now, I had a few bugs that were just comical, like a carcass of a smashed up helicopter just spinning on the ground constantly, or bodies disappearing and reappearing and then bouncing up in the air. And then you had some more annoying ones, like not being able to look up and down, only being able to look left and right. And I put that in my gameplay video, but that was only one occurrence. I got that multiple times. Some of the time, it'd only last for that life, and as soon as you either killed yourself or got killed, then it'd go back to normal. But other times it'd last for the whole game. And that wasn't just quitting the game and relaunching. You'd have to Alt F4, close the game completely, and go back into it from fresh. Not only that, but I had a couple of bugs where I couldn't change weapon at all. Couldn't change weapon or operator, or if I did pick a certain operator, it'd give me a completely different operator and I wouldn't be able to pick it at all. The weapon customization, like I said, it was good, but when you got the bug where it didn't save your weapons customization between lives, that got a little bit frustrating. And this happened the majority of the time with the AK for me. I would mod out the AK as soon as I equip it, put on my sights and put on my magazine choice and my grip, and then I'd die, respawn and have to do it all again. And that was annoying because I'd usually spawn and be instantly in combat again. So not having my desired specification like the right scope or everything was just hindering my game. And this, like I said, happened with the AK a lot for me, but I've seen it happen with other weapons as well, and it's just annoying, really annoying. I'm only going to briefly mention that the game crashed a few times, because you gotta expect that. they don't know how much capacity they're going to need for servers and all that sort of stuff with open beta tests like this. They really couldn't judge it. I don't blame them for the game crashes that I had. It just was frustrating a good few times, but you know, like I said, not really their fault. It was just massively overloaded on the beta weekend. And then you had one more thing that I just thought I'd mention, and that is the fact that when you click to spawn location, whether that be spawn on one of your squad mates or spawn at a random objective that you own, well, it wouldn't spawn me there. It'd spawn me in a completely different area, or right on top of the enemy, or in vehicles that have already blown up, and I was just not able to get out of them, and I just had to sit there in a burning car, because that made sense. Or the fact when you try to spawn on someone and it says in combat, you know, like it's supposed to, so you can't spawn on someone that's in combat because you'll just get killed straight away. Well, that didn't come up half the time either. So even if your squad mates were in a firefight with like 6 other people, you can still spawn on them and then just die straight away. More of a niggly little thing, but it's still annoying when you're playing a game with so much going on and so much fast-paced action. So yeah, like I said, Battlefield has got a lot to work on in the short amount of time that it has before its release. Now, I know they have said that that build was from a few months ago. Still, that is past the QA stage. Way past the QA stage. And a lot of those issues would have been picked up by QA testers in closed tests. And I think that, you know, we've got a problem if these issues persist and carry over. Not so much the bugs get squashed out right at the last minute a lot of the time with game development, but the balancing and the other things that I've mentioned that just aren't passable for a game that is so close to release. We have a problem if this carries on. I'm personally worried, and I'm lucky enough not to have purchased the game on pre-order. I got to play the beta, and so did everyone, but that just goes to show if I pre-ordered that game and already spent money on it, I'd already be thinking of refunding and just waiting to see what the game's like when it's fully released before purchasing again. And that's a shame, because this game looked really promising when we first saw it. And right now, it's just average. Sure, you can have some fun with it, but a lot of the time, you'd get really, really fed up with how many things are trying to spoil your fun in this game. But we only got to play one map on one mode, so who knows, my opinion might change when the game's released, but let me know what you think down below in the comments. Thank you for listening to me rant. I don't do it often, but boy, when I do. But I hope I've made some sense of some of the things that I found annoying and some of the things that I found good about Battlefield 2042. Now I'm just going to go and probably play a single player game where you don't have this many issues. So I'll see you soon. Much love. Subscribe for future content and all that. I don't have to tell you boys though, do I? See you later.